In NASCAR, crashes aren't accidents, they're inevitabilities. You've got 40 cars, all the size of refrigerators, doing 200 miles an hour, inches apart, with no room for hesitation. When something goes wrong, it happens fast. The spin. It starts simple, a spin. One car loses traction, maybe from a bump, dirty air, worn tires, or throttle overcorrection, and suddenly it's sideways at 180 miles per hour. NASCAR cars run rear-wheel drive, high horsepower and minimal grip, especially on worn ovals. When the rear tires break loose, the car yaws sideways. Once that happens, air pressure and tire angle combine to push the nose one way and the tail another, and control is gone. Sometimes a spin is harmless. The driver saves it, burns a little rubber, crowd goes wild. But if there's traffic behind, you've got the setup for half the crashes on this list, the bump. NASCAR is built on contact racing, especially short tracks like Bristol or Martinsville. Drivers bump the car ahead to unsettle them, forcing a mistake and an opening to pass. But when timing's off by inches, the bump turns into a spin, or worse, a wreck. Rear bumpers in NASCAR are curved and aerodynamic. Hit them slightly off-center and you lift the rear tires just enough to unload traction. At 120 miles per hour, that's all it takes to send someone into the wall. When done right, the bump and run is strategy. When done wrong, it's payback waiting to happen. The multi-car pileup. This is the one everyone knows, the big one. Usually happens at superspeedways like Daytona or Talladega, where cars run in tight packs at over 190 miles per hour, inches apart, drafting for aerodynamics. All it takes is one small mistake, a push too hard, a side draft too close, and one car hooks another's quarter panel. Suddenly, you've got 20 cars spinning, flipping, and piling into each other in a cloud of smoke. The physics are brutal. When one car goes sideways, it becomes a wall of steel across the track. The cars behind can't see, can't brake in time, and can't steer clear because they're boxed in. The big one is NASCAR's signature chaos, part of what makes superspeedways so thrilling and terrifying. The blowover. This one's pure aerodynamics gone wrong. When a car spins at 200 miles per hour, the air pressure under the chassis can flip it like a kite. NASCAR cars are designed for downforce, air pushing them down into the track. But once they spin backward, that same aerodynamic shape creates lift, turning the car into an airplane wing. When airflow hits under the floor pan, it forces the nose up. The moment the front tires leave the ground, it's game over. The car goes airborne. That's a blowover, and they're some of the most violent crashes in racing. You'll see them in slow-mo. The car lifts, yaws, sometimes even somersaults down the track. Roof flaps, introduced in the 1990s, were designed specifically to fight this. They deploy to break the airflow and bring the car back down. They've saved dozens of lives, but the risk never disappears. The wall hit. When NASCAR cars lose control, they often end up in the wall. And that impact is unlike anything else in motorsports. At 180 miles per hour, hitting concrete isn't a collision, it's an explosion. The car decelerates from full speed to zero in less than half a second. The G-forces spike over 50 Gs. That's why NASCAR tracks now use SAFER barriers, steel and foam energy reduction walls. They absorb impact, deforming inwards like a crumple zone, spreading the force across time and space so the driver's body doesn't take the hit. Inside the cockpit, drivers are protected by 5-point harnesses, Hans devices, full containment seats, and roll cages welded into the chassis. Without those, half the grid wouldn't be here. Wall hits look routine now because safety tech has made the unthinkable survivable. The T-bone. Side impacts are some of the most feared in NASCAR. They happen when one car spins broadside across the track and another slams straight into its door. The problem? NASCAR cars are strong front to back, but side structures have less room to absorb energy. The driver sits just inches from that impact zone. That's why modern cars, especially the next-gen chassis, feature reinforced door bars, intrusion panels, and energy-absorbing foam blocks around the seat. It's brutal physics. 3,400 pounds of steel meeting 3,400 more with almost no escape space. The worst crashes of the modern era, like Ryan Newman's 2020 Daytona wreck, were T-bones combined with rollovers. He survived because the cage didn't fail. Old cars wouldn't have given him that chance. The rollover. Rolling a 3,000-pound stock car looks cinematic, but it's pure mechanical violence. Most rollovers start after a wall impact or spin at high speed. Once the car's tyres bite sideways, momentum takes over. The car flips, slides, sometimes barrel rolls for hundreds of feet. Inside, the driver is in a controlled hurricane, sparks, flames, debris, and gravity doing its best to break bones. The roof flaps and rear deck fins now help keep cars planted, but sometimes airflow wins. The key to survival is the roll cage geometry, the welded steel structure forming a protective shell around the cockpit. Even after multiple rolls, as long as that cage stays intact, the driver can climb out shaken but alive. And the amazing part? Most of them do. The pit road crash. Pit road looks calm on TV, but it's one of the most dangerous zones in NASCAR. Cars dive in nose to tail, pit crews run inches from live traffic, and one mistake can turn into a fireball. Common causes: overshooting the pit box and clipping another crew, spinning tyres on exit and losing traction, collisions between cars trying to merge back into the race line. Even at 50 miles per hour, these crashes are violent because there's no space, and crew members are the most exposed people on the track. That's why NASCAR introduced pit road speed limits, helmets, and fire retardant suits for all crew members. It's not glamorous, but it saves lives every season. The mechanical failure. Sometimes the crash isn't caused by contact. It's just something mechanical giving up at the wrong time. A blown tyre sends the car straight into the wall. A suspension failure dumps the chassis onto the asphalt. A brake line rupture means no stopping at all. At 190 miles per hour, any failure is catastrophic. Modern teams use telemetry to monitor everything: brake temps, tyre wear, oil pressure, but parts still break. One loose lug nut, one bad weld, and you're sliding backward through smoke, praying the car doesn't flip. In NASCAR, everything is built to the limit, and sometimes the limit wins. The payback wreck. NASCAR isn't just mechanical. It's emotional. When two drivers have history, payback becomes inevitable. A little nudge in the corner, a block gone wrong, and suddenly it's personal. The payback wreck is part of the sport's DNA, from Dale Earnhardt to Joey Logano, from Bristol to Martinsville. It's not pretty, but it's real. Sometimes it's a tap that ruins a playoff run. Sometimes it's a full-blown spin into the wall on national TV. For fans, it's drama. For teams, it's destruction. For drivers, it's a reminder that racing isn't chess. It's gladiator combat at 200 miles per hour. The catch fence impact. Every NASCAR track has a catch fence, a massive steel mesh barrier behind the wall to keep debris and cars off the grandstands. But when a car goes airborne, sometimes that fence is the only thing between survival and tragedy. Cars hitting the fence, like Austin Dillon's 2015 Daytona crash, unleash staggering forces. The fence deforms, cables snap, and debris can scatter hundreds of feet. NASCAR has since reinforced these fences with layered cables and angled posts, but they remain the sport's last line of defense. They're not there for looks, they're there for when everything else fails. The fireball. Modern NASCAR fuel cells are nearly indestructible. Rubber bladder tanks sealed with foam to prevent explosions. But in rare cases, a ruptured line, a torn filler neck, or a direct impact on the rear, fuel meets heat, and the result is instant fire. It's a nightmare scenario, the car spinning, flames trailing, driver trapped. But the response is immediate. Every driver wears a Nomex suit, gloves, helmet with air tubes, an onboard fire suppression system. Within seconds, safety crews are there. That's why what used to be fatal in the 1980s now ends with the driver walking away, singed but alive. Fire is still the one element that scares every racer because you can't outdrive it. From simple spins to mid-air flips, every NASCAR crash tells the same story: physics, bravery, and survival. Each one looks like chaos, but behind it lies decades of engineering designed to turn death traps into second chances. The cars change, the rules evolve, but one thing stays the same. You can't race at 200 miles per hour without flirting with disaster. And if you want to understand how racers take their machines from mild to monstrous, go watch every stage of car tuning explained in detail. Because crashes show what happens when physics wins, tuning shows how far you can push it before it does.